Okay, so welcome to the second session. We shall start. So I've given you all the link to their Google Docs. So you can also click on the link to follow. So this session, we are going through the 2022 block test. So shall we look at the case study first? Okay, so thanks, Anik. Okay, so for this case study, right, the picture didn't come out correctly when I convert to Google Doc. Okay, but you should have the picture in your own PDF file where this document is in. I'll make some comments about the picture afterwards. Okay, but let's look at the case study questions first. So as usual, let us highlight the command words. Compare. Okay, so that's compare. Using a diagram, explain, and discuss. Okay, so just like your coming CSQ is 20 marks, so there's only one higher order skill question, which is the last one. Okay, so it's very straightforward. So for part A, right, compare, this part is only 1 mark. Okay, let me double check. 8, 10. Yeah, it's only one mark. So when it comes to 1 mark comparison question, focus on the difference. I think that'll be the best. Okay, for part A, we talk about the difference between the global sales trend of these three weeks. Then for part B, right? So using a diagram. So this is the minimum wage graph. So you have to be careful to draw the price control above the free market equilibrium. Note that this question is 5 marks, but there are actually two parts to it. Impact on workers, that's number 1. And impact on firms' total expenditure. So the word expenditure, right, should remind you of P times Q. Okay, P times Q. So you're supposed to use the graph to explain how will the firm's expenditure, the wage expenditure on workforce change. For part C, okay, explain a possible opportunity cost. So in this case, right, unlike the last block test, okay, the 2020, the one that we covered the last week, they didn't say with the aid of a diagram. So when they don't say with the aid of a diagram, you do not need to draw a graph. And definitely for two marks, right, you don't have to draw. Okay, I don't think there's much sense in drawing, but you need to explain the economic meaning of opportunity cost. So when you explain, right, you must again talk about the value of the next best alternative for God. Now, the word possible, right, implies that no, it may not be found in the case study. So if it is in the case study, you should use. But if not, right, you can use your own theoretical point. That will be fine. Okay, that's part C. D part 1. So again, if you have done the last block test, right, the one that we covered the last week, you can tell that this is a demand and supply kind of question. The cause and effect is pretty clear. There are major blows in the meat supply chain. Now you don't know what this exactly mean. Okay, if you are clear about what supply chain is, okay, if there's anything that's bad, because the word blow means bad, right? Okay, major blow. So if there's anything bad, it usually means supply is falling, because if the supply goes up, usually that will be not seen as a blow. But you can read the case study later to check. But this is the cause. So I'll say this is the cause. The effect that this part is talking about is contributed to the retail sales. So you have to be careful about retail sales being Q or P times Q. When we talk about the chart, right, we will tell you that it's P times Q. Okay, so in this case, how does the blow in the meat supply chain, right? Okay, which I would guess, without reading the case, is a fall in supply. How will it impact the P times Q of plant-based meat alternative reaching 7 billion? So this, I think, means it's a going up. So we'll read the case study to figure out. So it's a four-mark question, so you must give some good explanation. You need about 2 points for four-mark question. Again, for D part 1, they didn't say with the aid of a diagram. So you don't really have to draw a graph to get all 4 marks. Okay, you just need to explain the economic link. But for D part 2, right, this is the higher order skill question. So as a reminder, they won't prompt you whether you need to draw a graph or not. Okay, it's understood again. If a graph helps, just draw. Okay, discuss whether educational program is likely to be better than stockpiling. So this tells you that you need a TAS approach. So your R1, right, is obviously this. Okay, and your R2 is obviously this. So okay, so you have 2 policies here. One policy is educational program. The other policy is stockpiling. So, but the goal in mind, the end in mind, the effect in mind is to manage the shortage of conventional meat. Now, some students, when they did this, right, they may accidentally talk about imperfect information, because when you look at the word educational program, they suddenly think of public education. So they sort of like force the fact. They try to so-called insert imperfect information here. They thought that this D part 2 is a market failure question. Now, how do you know that's not the case? Because the effect here is to manage shortage. It's not to correct the resource inefficiency, resource misallocation. So it's not like the formula milk case study you did. Okay, notice that for that, right, it is clear that it may or may not lead to an efficient allocation of resources. That's how you know that the public education for the formula milk, right, is to correct the resource misallocation, the allocated inefficiency. But for here, right, number 1, the question is focusing on managing shortage. Now, when there's a shortage, right, it doesn't mean the market has failed. Okay, so don't get mixed up between market failure and shortages. In fact, you have learned in the last week's CSQ, right? If the government don't intervene, there will be no such thing as a shortage in the free market. Okay, the market forces will immediately get rid of all possible surpluses and shortages in the market. So when there's a shortage, right, it doesn't mean there's a market failure, but rather it means that the government is stopping the price from adjusting. So this question is not imperfect information. That's the first clue. The second clue, again, if I'm not sure, when you read the case study, right, you realize that there's nothing in the case extract that talk about misperception, talk about imperfect information. So it will take a very weird point to force imperfect information into D part 2. Okay, so a good advice is that when you're going for your June block test, don't change the question to what you want the question to ask. Okay, just because you studied imperfect information, okay, don't try to force D part 2 into a question of market failure when it's not. Then you will be severely penalized. Okay, read the question, make sure you address what the question is asking. Okay, so that's basically D part 2. So I hope there's no questions so far. Okay, let's go back to this case. Okay, so maybe since the chart didn't come out, right, let me show you another Google Docs where the chart did come out. I think it's, let's see, it's still in my Chrome. Okay, here. Okay, now you can see this, right? This is the chart that is supposed to come out. I don't know why it came out in the Chrome Google Doc, but not in the Microsoft Edge Google Doc. Okay, let me try. Can I zoom in, please? Now, if you look at this chart here, right, projected global sales of conventional meat and okay, so it tells you that the orange bar, the orange part here refers to cultured meat. So the asterisk tells you that it's meat produced in the laboratory by tissue engineering. The yellow one refers to conventional meat. The gray one refers to vegan meat substitutes. So already, right, okay, so when you first look at this, right, when you look at the y-axis, you may not be clear whether does the y-axis refer to quantity or the revenue, P times Q. There might be some students that will think it's Q, okay, but how do you know it's not Q? Because conventional meat, right, it should be quite clear. It's not just one type of meat. When you talk about conventional meat, right, we are talking about chicken meat, pork, beef, okay, all these things. So it doesn't make sense for the y-axis to be quantity because you cannot add chicken, pork, and beef directly just like that. Okay, it makes zero sense to say, for example, in 2025, if let's say this value here is 1,000, the peak is 1,001, right? 1,100 billion. It doesn't make sense to add up the different types of meat together to form this number to tell me that this is the quantity. It makes zero sense at all because, like the old saying goes, right? You cannot compare apple to oranges, so you cannot add them together just in terms of quantity. So this makes sense if it's in terms of revenue. What's the total amount earned by chicken meat? Okay, in money terms. How much is the value of pork in money terms? How much the value of beef in money terms? Then you can add them together. Is that clear? So my conclusion is that this y-axis is about sales revenue and not the quantity. Okay, so don't get mixed up. This is P times Q. So it will help you to address the question in part. Let me see which part it is. Part D. So when you look at the retail sales here, it refers to P times Q and not Q. So you should tailor your answer accordingly. Okay, the other trap that this figure one can test you. Okay, can I get some of you to open your webcam? It's very boring to look at my own face. Okay, can I get Anik, Jia Seng, and Sarah? You can look elsewhere. Okay, but can you open your webcam so that I don't just look at my own face all the time? Okay. Thank you so much. So it's boring to look at, although I don't mind looking at my own face, but it's boring to look at face all the time. Okay, thank you so much. Jia Seng and Anik, Linus and Brendan, I encourage you to do that too. Okay, don't be shy. You should enjoy looking at your own face. Okay, the other trap is this for the compare question. Now, when you look at the vegan meat substitute, right? It is probably very tempting to say that the sales have fallen, right? The P times Q of the vegan meat, because the line here seems to be, if you look at the okay, nice picture. You look at the black line, right? Can you tell there's a bit of a drop? So I think when students look at this, when I first look at this, right, I didn't set this test, obviously. So when I look at this, I thought that the sales of the vegan meat substitute have fallen. Okay, because the black line seems to be going down, right? Going down. Unfortunately, that's not correct. Okay, you look at the answer, which I'll give you afterwards. You have to look at the height of the black bar. Because if you look at the black bar, right, the height at 2025, how tall the height is, you compare to the height at 2040, you realize that it has grown bigger, right? The height has grown taller. So this tells you that even for the vegan meat substitute, okay, the sales have gone up. Okay, have gone up. So don't be distracted by the declining line. Okay, declining line. So are you clear? So don't look at how the line drops down and come to the false conclusion that the sales of vegan meat substitute has gone down. Okay, the actual thing should look is the height. Okay, the height. So when the height goes up, right, when it gets taller, it means that the sales have gone up. Okay, gone up. So Okay, but let's just say in the real test, if this comes at the real test, you forgot and you accidentally say that it fell. Okay, you just lose one mark. That's fine. Okay, don't lose sleep about it. Okay, you will not cause it to fail. But this is a nice trap, like. Extract one. Okay, extract one talks about meatless food industry. So you may have heard of the Impossible Burger. So this one tells you that slowly we are eating vegetarian meat instead. So this tells you that the demand for vegan meat has soared. So this tells you that probably the supply shock, the bad news to the supply shock has probably caused the demand for plant-based meat to be higher. So it's good news, and you will see how that will result in. So you are talking about virus outbreak, right? Okay, so again, this tells you, this should be pretty clear to you, right? That it is bad news to the meat supply chain. If you have virus outbreaks, right? Okay, the meat supply would have fallen. Okay, would have fallen. And of course, beef industries have sustained 13.6 billion of loss. So all this tells you that it's bad news for the meat supply market. Okay, you would guess that the supply of meat has fallen. Now here there's meat shortages. Okay, shuttered plants and growing number of sick workers. So this tells you why the supply curve for conventional meat has obviously been falling. Okay, if plants are forced to shut down, if the workers cannot come to work because they are down with the virus, it is bad news for the meat production. Okay, in Germany, okay, so now you are being introduced the nationwide minimum wage. Okay, so this is to help the workers, so your graph should be drawn correctly. Beyond COVID-19, okay, there are several reasons for the shift towards a more meatless future. So you should expect the demand for plant-based meat to be higher. So urbanization, population growth, rising global middle class. So this tells you that as you become, okay, I don't think it's tested the case, but when it's urbanization means that you are converting more of the agricultural land to build houses to house the people, as well as maybe building more factories and plants to produce other goods. So this means that the land available for rearing cows, all these things should be smaller. Okay, population growth, of course, it means that the demand for houses will be higher. Rising global middle class, okay, as income goes up, you should expect the demand for meat to be higher. Okay, so population surge, alternative protein source. I think this is where students may misconceive that the question they could be on negative externalities. Okay, but again, it doesn't make sense for the 8-mark question to be on negative externality, because just because there's negative externality, right, it doesn't mean there's a shortage. So don't try to force the question to be market failure. Okay, market failure. Extract 2. Okay, nice cap. Extract 2. Singapore is trying to become a plant-based meat firm. So this is in line with the case study we did last week, right? 30-30 vision. Okay, so this we repeat the Singapore's goal by 2030 to have 30% of the food production of the food needs in Singapore to be supplied locally. So of course it takes a lot of land to rear pigs and rear cows. But if let's say we can actually be a hub for all these plant-based meat, right? I think it's more suitable for our land scarce Singapore. Okay, so I see some hope there. But of course, consumers in Singapore have been hesitant. Okay, obviously because the price is way too high. I've tried the Impossible Burger, but it's actually doesn't really taste like meat, so I would not go in. I only ate because it's free. Okay, so this is about the educational program. So as you do the last question, so take note that if you educate the people into thinking into caring more for the environment, right, you should be aware that plant-based meat requires less animal feed. Okay, the whole idea is that in order to have real cows and pigs, right, you need to feed them. Okay, and they demand a lot of food. So you actually grow a lot of food, agriculture food, use a lot of land just for the sake to feed the meat so that we can eat the meat when the pigs and the chicken grow up. Okay, so if we are willing to eat the meat if we are willing to eat the vegetable directly when they are converted to plant-based meat, right? There's actually less land that's required to grow crops. It means there'll be less soil erosion and all these things. Okay, so all these are the policies for the 8-mark question. Extract 3, okay, stockpiling. Okay, so this stockpiling is obviously, again, another policy to manage the shortage is to have stockpile. So you can think of it this way, for the 8-mark question, now, whenever there's a shortage, right, it means that QD is more than QS. So if you 对症下药, if you address the root cause, right, one way to get rid of the shortage is to increase the supply. Because when you increase the supply, right, the quantity supply tend to go down, ceteris paribus. So you can think of stockpiling as some kind of increasing the supply. If you have the stockpile and you release the stockpile whenever you see market shortages, the supply will shift to the right. Okay, that will help to manage it. On the other hand, right, when you have an educational policy, is to reduce the demand for conventional meat. So if there's a shortage in the conventional meat market, not only increasing the supply of conventional meat, they actually solve it, reducing the demand for conventional meat through the public education can also help to manage the shortage. So once you are clear about these two, right, your plan of attack for the 8-mark question should be pretty clear. Okay, one policy increase supply, the other policy decrease demand. Both ways, right, can help you to manage the shortage. Which way is better? Okay, so that's the focus. So this tells you that the 8-mark question is not imperfect information, nor externality type of question. Okay, so I hope that's clear. Okay, so maintaining the necessary stockpile. Okay, so dynamic task, so you can use it as a form of limitation. This is another limitation of, obviously, to actually stockpile, right? You need to have land. So Singapore is clearly short of land. So make sure you mention this as a possible limitation of the stockpiling. Okay, so when you read the case study, again, when you have the questions in mind, you read back the case study, you know that the question you can roughly tell yourself, if this is what each question is asking, I will deliver what the question asks. Okay, so for part A, any questions so far? Okay, let me share the answer now. Okay, hang on, give me a minute. Okay, so I hope you have tried the questions already. That's the case study answer 2021. Case study answer. Okay, let me share with you the Google Docs now. Okay, this is 2021. Oops. Can I give you that? Stop sharing. 2022. Okay, so this is the answer. Let me share with you. Okay, so I hope you can see the answer. Okay, now you can compare your answer to what is given here. So once you are clear about what I said about the height of the gray bar, then you should be quite clear why this answer is correct. Okay, to be honest, when I first look at the answer, I thought maybe there's a typo because the sales of the vegan meat, how can it rise with a dipping line? Then when I look at the chart again, okay, I look at the height of the gray bar, it tells you that this answer is correct. Okay, so for 1-mark comparison question, give the difference. So the main obvious difference is that the sales of conventional meat fell, okay, but the sales of the other two meet, right? So if you're confused about the bigger meet, remember it's the height of the gray bar, not the slope of the line. Okay, don't get mixed up. But if you lose this mark, it's fine. You will not feel good. Okay, so don't be so sad with that. Okay, so part A, this is the main comparison, the difference. Okay, sales of conventional meat fell, but the other two meat went up. Any question? Okay, part B. So part B, right? This one is a 5-mark question. So in case you're not aware, okay, let me use Microsoft whiteboard. Okay, to understand the question, right? Let's draw the graph together. I'm trying to use a mouse to draw this, so it will not be that great. Labor, supply, labor, demand. Okay, so you should be drawing the graph with me. So when you talk about the labor market, make sure you are clear about a few things. Your graph, right, shouldn't be price. Okay, be careful. Your y-axis should be W. The W here means wage. Okay, wage. Then the x-axis should be the quantity of labor. So before you do anything, like what I always say, note the original W naught. Okay, the original L naught. So without the minimum wage, right, when there is the free market, okay, the wage expenditure of the firm is basically this square, W naught times L naught. So if let's say the wage is, let's say maybe $10 per hour, and let's say 100 workers are hired. So before the minimum wage, right, the firm's wage expenditure, remember in this case, right, the firms are the demander of labor. The workers are the supplier of labor. So the wage expenditure here refers to the firms. Okay, they spend $10 times 100. So the square, the rectangle there is the wage expenditure. Clear? After there's a minimum wage. Okay, let's draw a minimum wage here. Okay, use a blue line here. If let's say this is the minimum wage. Okay, let's say it's set at $20 per hour. Again, you have to be careful. Not all workers are worse off. So if you want to make full use of the graph, right, this is the labor demand, and this is the labor supply. Okay, so this minimum wage, right, will lead to a surplus of worker. There'll be some unemployment. But the key is this. Again, when you compare this area A and this area B, from the workers' point of view, right, some workers are happy. Okay, they were happily working at $10 per hour. Even after the minimum wage was raised to 20, some of them still get to keep their jobs. So these workers are better off by the area A. Area A is the consumer surplus of the firm that goes to a group of workers that manage to keep their job under the minimum wage. So this A is their good. But other workers are worse off because they were happily working at $10 per hour and they are able to get B as their producer surplus. But now they don't get hired. So they actually lose B. Okay, lose B. So the key is that A and B, right? A may be bigger than B, B may be bigger than A, depending on the labor demand elasticity, mainly on the labor demand elasticity. Okay, so not all workers are better off. But what about the wage expenditure? It should be clear that with the minimum wage, right, now the expenditure is this rectangle here. Okay, so it used to be this rectangle here, right? Now it has changed to this rectangle here. So I think for most cases, you can conclude that the area A, right, is obviously smaller than this entire area here. Okay, so in this case, the firm's wage expenditure should be lower. Okay, lower. Area A is smaller density area. So this is how your graph should be shown. Okay, hope that's clear. So make full use of the graph when you write your words. So once you're clear about this, let's go back to the PDF file. So the diagram is again 1 mark. Again, when we say 1 mark, we assume that you are making some attempt to explain the graph in your words. So the effects on workers is that, okay, some are worse off, some are better off. If you show the change in the PS, right, you will get the $2 here. Okay, for the effect on firms. So this is how you get the marks. Okay, so in this case, I think here they assume that the graph, the demand curve is very steep. So if you go back to the graph, okay, let's take a look at. Let's say what if you draw a very steep demand curve? Okay, let me just curiously draw it out. Okay, if you draw a very steep demand curve, okay, and let's say there's a conventional slope, okay, right? I guess if you draw like that, it's possible that this additional wage expenditure, right, will be bigger than this. So maybe that's how the answer came out of this conclusion. Okay, so the point of this graph will show that if you draw a very inelastic labor demand, because if it's true that it's very hard to actually substitute meat worker from the production process, then you can say that the wage expenditure actually go up. Okay, so can you see the difference between this graph and this graph here? This graph, okay, the one that you see on the left, right? The labor demand is sufficiently wage elastic such that we can see, right, the area A will be smaller than B. But for this other graph here, right, this is our area A. Okay, this is B. This small area is B. Okay, so in this case, I would say it's also possible to show that the expenditure goes up. So once you are clear about this, okay, then this answer is also reasonable. Any question? Okay, so to get all $5, right, you must say that some workers are better off, some workers are worse off, given a graph. And from the producer's point of view, right, you are supposed to conclude that the labor demand is inelastic, and because of that, right, the expenditure actually goes up. Hope that's clear. For part C, okay, so this one you don't need to draw a graph. So you want to explain in terms of opportunity cost. So I would say if you allocate more resources aiming to accelerate technological advancement, that requires money from the government. So identify what is the next best choice. It's up to you. You can say that the government could build more homes, okay, more homes, more houses to house the growing population. So when you allocate more resources aimed at accelerating those technological advancement, the foregone benefit, right, is the value of the houses will keep up. Okay, so that's for part C. For part D, okay, let's take a quick look. So you must say that the fall in supply. So this is very similar to the case study we went through the last week. So when there's a blow in meat supply, right, supply goes up, the price of meat goes up. Then you must state that plant-based meat and conventional meat are substitutes. So the demand for the plant-based meat, right, will be higher. Okay, once the price of conventional meat goes up. So when the demand for the plant-based is higher, then the P times Q always go up. Okay, you don't have to worry about PES. Rise in P, rise in Q, therefore the P times Q will be higher. Okay, so that's how the marks are given for this question. Okay. Okay, so this is part D. Okay, for part 2, let me show you the answer. So once you are clear about what I said, right, this should be quite clear. So the shortage here is when quantity demand is greater than quantity supply. So this tells you that if you want to manage the shortage, one of the policies should be to increase supply, and the other policy should be to decrease demand. When you increase supply, QS will be higher. When you decrease demand, QD will be lower. So R1, right, if you look at the education, is to reduce the demand for conventional meat. So try to explain that it shifts the demand for conventional meat to the left. Okay, so when that happens, the shortage will tend to be increased. Okay, you can educate people to eat plant-based meat. Okay, that will shift the demand for conventional meat. Okay, so as I said to you the last week, and I'll remind you all again, when it comes to policies for your coming block test, right, especially the 8-mark question, when in doubt, right, make sure you give a limitation of the policy. Okay, you never know whether that counts for the analysis marks or the evaluation marks. But the point is this, your marks will always be higher. Okay, so don't forget to put the limitation of the policy after your R1. Okay, R1. For the 15-mark essay, it should be quite clear. You should always have limitations. Okay, because there are 5 marks given for evaluation. But for 8 marks case study, right, it's 6 plus 2. So some A-level question, the plus 2 is only given for the summative conclusion. It means for this question, right, at the end of the day, you must tell me which policy is better, the first one or the second one. Okay, you shouldn't repeat the limitation that you said. Clear? Okay, so for some question, the 2 marks will be just based on summative conclusion, but they will park the limitation marks into the analysis mark. 6 marks. Are you clear? So if you don't understand what I just said, right, I'll say just be kiasu. Anytime you explain policies, right, if the commandment requires some kind of evaluation, always tell me the limitation. So for this case, right, the limitation of the education program is that it depends on consumers' receptiveness. Okay, if you don't think that plant-based meat is a good substitute, you wouldn't eat plant-based meat no matter what. And when the price of the plant-based meat is so high, right, there's no reason to switch to plant-based meat. Okay, last year's HCI Teachers Day, they gave us the Impossible Burger for free as a treat for us. When I ate it, right, I realized the plant-based meat sucks. The meat is clearly not meat. So even how much you educate me, right, I'll rather go for beef or chicken. Okay, so this really depends on consumer receptiveness. For R2, right, is to increase the supply. So when you have stockpile, as I said, right, whenever there's a shortage, it's a signal for the government to release the meat that is stored in the stockpile. So this will increase the supply and hence will manage the shortage. Of course, the necessary limitation is that Singapore is a very small country in terms of land size. So the cost of storage will be exceptionally high. Okay, exceptionally high. So this is the one limitation. So for the final stand, right? Okay, so I think we are fine for either stand. Some stand may be easier to justify than others. So here we put the educational program. Okay, educational program. So this is based on the land size of Singapore. Okay, but take a stand. Okay, take a stand on either educational program or conventional meat. Make sure you just justify it. You get at least plus 1. Okay. Any question? So the R1, R2 will be quite clear, right? One is to decrease demand. The other one is to increase supply. Okay, so it's clear. I'll again I'll post it in the Google Docs after this. Let's go back to there. Questions. Any questions so far? Good. Okay. This one is the Microsoft Edge, right? Okay, now let's look at the 2022 block test essays. Okay, so the good thing about this particular year essay is that the part B of goal seems to be the same, right? Discuss the government policy, discuss the government policy. So this again gives you a clue for your coming block test is that we don't want the two essays. Okay, in your coming block test, right, you have a choice for the essays. So now from the school's point of view, right, we obviously don't want one essay to be significantly more tricky or difficult or more difficult than other. Then everyone will choose the most straightforward one. So we'll tend to make the two essays of similar kind of difficulties. Okay, similar. So it boils down to minor differences. So make sure you choose the one that you are clear with. So for question 1, right, the context is fast food. Question 2, the context is face pass. And it turns out that for both questions, it's about externalities as well as imperfect information, right? Because look at question 1. Okay, so here's a good tip for 1A. You must have at least 2 market failures for a 10-mark question. So if you don't, right, you read the preamble. So it tells you that there's spillover cost. Spillover cost here means negative externalities. Underestimate tells you it is imperfect information. So make sure you address both imperfect information and the negative externality. For question 2, right? Okay, spillover benefits. So spillover benefit tells you it is positive externalities. And underestimate the true benefits. So if you look at A and B, right, the questions are similar. So I think if I view, right, it all boils down to this. How familiar am I with the policies, let's say, used in countries around the world? Okay, you can of course use Singapore, but it's probably good to mention a few, but it's probably not the critical one. Okay, so it all boils down to this. Are you more familiar with the current policies for fast food consumption? Or are you more familiar with the current policy for wearing of face masks? I suspect for many of yours, since we just came out from the pandemic, you are probably more familiar with face masks, right? You are aware, for example, that Singapore, we subsidize face masks to make it free. Okay, we have regulation for face masks. Okay, so you may be more familiar with face mask policy. Fast food, you may not be very clear. So if you are more familiar with policies involving face masks, question 2 will be much better. Okay, that's one way you can decide for a choice. The other thing that I can see is this. Now, if you look at question 1, underestimate the actual cost. So if you want to highlight the words, right, I'll highlight the entire phrase, underestimate the actual cost. Whereas for question 2, right, underestimate the actual benefits. Now, I think for many students, especially for your batch, right, because your appendix talk about a graph where to be used when the consumers underestimate the cost, right? That is in the appendix. As I said, it's the last page of your notes, the pink book. On the other hand, right, the main part of the notes for your pink book, we talk about underestimate the actual benefit. So I suspect many students will be more familiar with that graph where your MPB perceived is different from MPB actual. And because many students typically don't like to read appendix, you are not aware that there's an alternative graph in the last page of your pink book where it shows you how to draw the graph, where the consumers underestimate or overestimate the actual cost. So your MPC perceived is now different from the MPC actual, right? I think you can't remember ever drawing the graph, right? It helps. I guess it helps that so far all the graphs we have drawn in class is about the MPP perceived versus MPP actual. So if you are careful, ceteris paribus, right? Question 2, right? There are less traps. Okay, not only are you more familiar with face masks, you're more familiar with the policies involving face masks. You're also very familiar with the graph for MPP perceived, MPP actual. So if you accidentally draw the same graph for question 1, right? I think there's a potential trap there. Okay, so I advise students, ceteris paribus, choose question 2. Okay, less trap. Okay, so remember, when you make a choice of questions, suddenly you have to think about all these things. Which one has less potential to slip up, okay, for the trap? So question 2 will be. Any questions? Okay, so if you are more familiar, I suspect more students are familiar with question 2. So we can talk a bit more about question 1. I'll show you how the graph looks like. So for this case, right, the spillover cost, okay, so R1 should be negative externalities. Okay, R2 should be imperfect information. Okay, so for part A, no need to give limitation. Save your limitation for part B. So for this one, okay, so you should this one. Okay, R1, okay, policies to address negative externalities. This can be tax and regulation. R2, okay, maybe before I do R2. E1, limitations. R2, policies to address imperfect information. Let's say it can be public education, regulation. E2, and E3 is maybe speech is better, which is relatively better. Okay, it could be true, of course, you need both policies, but try not to just say that you need both policies. Try to explain why. Okay, try to have some kind of ranking. What are the pros and cons? Any questions? So this is basically for part B. So the approach for question 2 is pretty much the same. Okay, so let's explain question 1, how the graph will look like. Okay, let me use the Microsoft whiteboard again. So in case you are not aware, you can go back to the appendix, the last page of your big book. So if you are drawing the imperfect information for part 1, okay, we advise students to draw this. Okay, you have your NPB, MPC. Okay, so under normal circumstances, this will be when we rationally make the best choice, right? We will consume fast food, where MPB equals to MPC. So if there's no market failure, this will also be MSB with MSC. Unfortunately, when you over-consume fast food, right, your perceived cost is a bit lower. So this becomes your perceived. Okay, the actual cost could be here. So when you're over-consuming due to misperception of the cost, you thought the cost is lower than what it would have been. So had you known the true cost, right, you will consume less. Okay, so if this is the price of fast food, okay, you are over consuming fast food. Had you known the actual cost, this should be the correct price. So in this case, how do you shade the debit loss? So you've forgotten, right? This QE is the best output. So use it as a benchmark. The tip of the triangle always point towards the correct output. So this debit loss. Okay, so this is the correct graph to draw if you are doing 1A. 1A. Okay, so you want to stress that because I'm not aware of the true cost. Okay, I thought the cost of eating fast food is lower. So you can say maybe I don't understand, I misperceive my probability of being fat, being obese because I eat fast food. So because of that, I tend to consume too much. I thought the cost is lower than what it is. Okay, so in case you're curious, right, today the Max is giving the large deal, I think 50% off single McSpicy meal. Okay, it's either 50% off or one for one. So I'm planning to eat that for lunch today. Okay, so perhaps it's because I underestimate my chance of being sick for eating all this fast food. So because of the price that Max is giving me, I over consume fast food. Had I known the true cost, okay, I'll be with, that means the cost I will consume much less food. Okay, that's the problem. Misperception. Are you clear? So when you explain imperfect information, don't mix up with negative externalities. Okay, so in this case, I'm underestimating my chance of being fat, and hence I always think I can exercise one more. I can ride a bike for a longer time to get rid of the fat, but it may not be true, so I can fall sick. And if I know the true cause, I'll consume less. Is that clear? So give an example of the misperception that is not a third-party cause. Okay, not a cause of third party. Any questions? Okay, this is the graph you also do for one day. Okay, to play safe. Okay. Okay, once you are clear about this, goes back to the PDF file. Okay, do I have the answer? Let me open up the essay one. Okay, this is a question. Essay one. So here we cover externalities first. So in case you're curious, for externalities, right, when you eat too much fast food, you may fall sick. Okay, you may fall sick. So when you want to explain NEC, right, don't mix up with imperfect info. So when you fall sick, right, when you call in sick, your fellow colleagues in the workplace may have to cover you. Okay, so they have to bear some cost. So as a teacher, if I eat too much fast food, I fall sick. I cannot teach you, right, in class. My colleagues have to take over my class. So I'm imposing an external cost to them. Okay, so that's why I don't consider that. Okay, I should eat all the fast food I want. I don't think of the cost. Are you clear? So make sure you express third party cost carefully. Okay, so this externalities, imperfect info. So can you now see the graph in figure 2? You understand how the graph or cost looks like? Okay, so as I said, you can understand why I say that students will rarely talk about this because they rarely view the page in the appendix. So my advice is that set these variables, choose question 2. The graph is more familiar. MPV perceived and MPV actual. Okay, but this is the graph also draw for one. Otherwise, the rest of the expression is the same. Any questions? Good. Any questions about question 1? Any of you did what? Okay, for part B, the policies are suspended. So for 1B, right, the tax. So don't rush through this. Set the tax equals to MEC and the efficient output. So for the limitation, right, I encourage students, if you can, give an example of the imperfect information from the government side of knowing the MEC, right? That is somehow linked to fast food. If you can, try not to just say the government doesn't have the correct information. So you read the answer. Can you see this? Okay, there are many of us, right, who even when we eat fast food, we rarely fall sick. Okay, so you cannot really say that because of the MEC, I fall sick to eat fast food, I impose the cost of my colleagues, therefore I tax all the fast food. Okay, what if there are some healthy workers? They can eat all the fast food they want, but they never fall sick. Then if they have to pay the tax for eating the fast food, right, that's clearly overtaxing. Okay, so give an example that fits the fast food category. I'm sure as youths, you all understand, right? The main benefit of youth is that you can eat all you want and still you don't fall sick. So if you are paying the tax, that's way too much. For R2, right, regulation. So that's where you have education, regulation. I'll be curious to see whether there will come a time where government in Singapore, MOH, right, will ban McDonald's for pricing the fast food so cheap. Okay, stop with the 50% off. Okay, it's like the UK ban on the bad food in the supermarket that WhatsApp to all of you, right? Okay, like last Monday, it was 50% off for the double McSpicy extra size large upsize meal. Man, I ate that, and I was in Max last week. I saw many other Singaporeans all eating the double McSpicy. My goodness, it was very cheap, you know. $5 plus, double McSpicy with large fries and a large Coke. $5 plus. I mean, it's cheaper than any hawker food you can get. It's aircon, you know, complete meal. I mean, if the government is really serious about us overeating, such that it causes all this overconsumption, maybe they should ban Max from doing that. But it's bad, right? Because there are many of us who can eat fast food and never fall sick. Okay, so now I hope we can understand the limitations. Okay, so this is the basic approach. Any questions? So if you are doing question 1, you can be aware of all these policies that can be used and note the pros and cons. Any questions? Yeah, so this conclusion is very good. I recommend you all read. Okay, so there. Okay, the point is this: make sure when you have a conclusion, you address it based on the context, fast food. Okay, show that you are thinking about the question. Don't just forbid out everything. So here we're also talking about the employment. So if the fast food industry employ many Singaporeans, any tax that causes the demand for fast food to fall may affect their jobs. So there's a lot of unintended consequences that you can have. Okay, so this is basically the approach for question 1. Question 2, I won't be going through because it's pretty clear. I will send you our Google Classroom. I'll upload to the Google Classroom the answer for this. But I hope you learned something on how to approach all these questions, especially how to choose the correct question. Choose the one that you are more familiar with in terms of the graphs you use, in terms of the examples. Okay, any questions? Are we good? Okay, so this video tape, our video recording, I'll make it available on YouTube. You want to watch again? So let me print screen to make sure I double check the attendance. Okay, so if there are no questions, enjoy the rest of your break. Okay, study hard and yeah, do a good job for your coming June test. Any questions? If not, then that'll be all. Thanks for coming. Okay, I'll see you all in the term 3. Okay, bye-bye.